Welcome, welcome, friends. David here. Welcome to this week's Griscom stream. Know it's a little last minute, so I go a little earlier than normal today. Matt and I got a lot of recording to do later, so I figured I wouldn't be able to get to it, and I want to chat with y'all. And as always, for folks that are new, welcome. And just letting you know, these are a little bit different than the main show. We hang out. I take y'all's questions. It's really, call it the Grissom stream. It's more of like a check-in. I like to hear what's on y'all's mind and what stories y'all are following, some things that you might want to see us covering on Left Reckoning in the near future. So I don't know, and maybe we'll see. Maybe these earlier, hell, we could even go earlier in the morning if we wanted to. Might be able to reach a different audience out there than the afternoon ones do. But just a couple quick notes before we get into it. The anti-corporatist says, "Did you hear about the quote voting irregularities in Arizona and Nevada?" I haven't been following those things super closely, but I'll tell you that I don't think diving too deep into any of these these bits with the hopes that Trump is going to be found to have not won the election is going to be particularly fruitful. I think they won. But a couple quick things before we get into it, and please get those questions in so we can chat and hang out for a little bit before I have to go. But one, we have some great guests coming up, really great guests. Next week, we're going to be joined by our good friend Lillian Tuchurchia. You know her from their excellent work on the What's Left of Philosophy podcast. She is a regular guest on this program, and we're going to be talking obviously about the election, but trying to bring a strong socialist feminist perspective, to these claims from many in the liberal media, many progressive pundits that don't want to look at the economy, at class politics to explain the election. So, as always, we love having Lillian on the program. And in that same vein, talking about super smart people who we love chatting with, we're going to be joined by Vivek Chibber very, very soon. I won't announce anything for him, but there's some really exciting things coming down the pipe there. But we're really honored to have Vivek on the program. We're going to be talking about the Obama coalition, what's next for socialist politics, and much, much more. If you haven't seen our conversations with Vivek after this is over, I highly suggest you go and listen to the ones. We've done stuff on imperialism. We've done lots on class politics. Vivek Chibber is certainly somebody that this movement and the socialist movement at all times, but especially right now, should be engaging with. So lots to be excited for, friends. And, we're looking forward to it. But as always, I'm happy to be here with the smartest folks in the world, and that is all of y'all. So let's chat a little bit. If anyone's in the chat, I know there's a bunch of folks here, so don't be bashful. We love hearing from you. We love chatting and hearing what's on your mind. These are kind of structureless conversations. I'm happy to talk about most things, and I know we're on YouTube. I think we're on Instagram. I don't know if I can see Instagram comments on here. If not, I'm sorry for that. I'll pull that up to see. But our good friend Byron Man, and we might have more Germany coverage pretty soon. Actually, our conversation with Steven Semler, who is y'all remember, who did all those charts explaining the Kamala Harris loss, that got translated into German. It's going to be in Konkret magazine in their December issue, which is kind of interesting. But Byron Man says, do you think the European Union / United Kingdom will go along with Trump on Israel the same way they did with Biden now that the ICC has pressed charges? I feel like EU civil society will not comply for long. Well, you probably know better than I do. I can't imagine that we see too much movement from the UK, which I know a bit better. They have been happy and complicit in this genocide as well. I think on a larger point about Trump and how he's going to relate to the rest of the world, I think one thing that is going to be notably different in this second Trump administration is going to be the acceptance that Donald Trump receives from the United Kingdom, from the European Union. I think he's going to be treated less as an aberration and more as politics and business as usual. And that's going to, obviously result in some disastrous decisions, advantages, and movements for Trump and his ilk. But I think that the idea that it will be similar to the first Trump administration, where there were a lot of people who didn't really want to play ball with Trump. I think that the elites globally um, are starting to see this right wing, far right movements that have been sweeping into power. You know, across the globe as like the new norm, as the new conservatism. So I would unfortunately, say that you might need to expect a lot of these institutions to play ball with Trump in a way that they might have not in the first one. And as an EU citizen, I will not go with Trump. Well, I don't think you should. To do something about the leaders there. My own dad, you made me say that. Said, "When's the next Left Reckoning live show?" I mean, I was talking to Matt about that the other day. We'd love to do that. It's been what 2 years since our last one in Los Angeles. We had a great time in LA. Um, we'd love to get back to New York. I mean, we'd love to do one in the South. If there's anywhere that people think we could get a good crowd to. I mean, basically, we're super down for it. The question is where we think we can do it in a way, since Matt has to travel, that we can at least, like, if we want to do something in Texas, we'd at least have to make sure that we could get Matt here without too much personal cost. So super down. And if anyone has any ideas or connections or anything like that, we'd definitely love to do it. Those live shows are a lot of fun, and it's great getting together with all of you. Good morning, my friend. It's good to see you. And as always, for people just joining, these are kind of check-in streams, so we hang out um, and answer y'all's questions and talk about some of the things we got planned for the next couple of weeks on Left Reckoning. We got big guests coming in December. I'm really excited for that. Lillian Churchy is going to be great um, next Tuesday. Bill Williamson says, "Is there still resistance in Gaza, Palestine, combating the IOF? Also, any updates on Lebanon? I don't follow the on the ground military operations, super closely. There's other organizations that are going to do that much better than I can. I know that there still is resistance, but I mean, Gaza is battered right now. Lebanon, last I've been seeing is that there is this kind of pause as organizations try to see what this new Trump administration is going to mean for the region. But I think we should definitely get a guest on. I've been meaning to reach out to Asal Rod, who we've had a bunch on this program, to talk a little bit more about that. I know Stephen Semler. I was chatting with him recently. He has a big report coming out on Joe Biden's extremely cynical ultimatum. Where Biden said, "Hey, stop starving Gaza." And then 30 days passed, and they said, "You know what? Forget about that." So, we definitely are due for a big update on Left Reckoning over that. Marcos, our good friend, says, "What's going on, David?" Not too much, man. Happy to hear from you. I hope these morning ones are good. I know some people can't make the afternoon ones, so it's good to hear from different folks. This is a good question here. From Kyle O'Connor, says, "What are your thoughts on the potential of tenant organizing versus labor organizing? Strengths of one versus the other, or just general reflections?" This is a great question, and there's nothing wrong with this question. I don't want to, like, in my answer, like, pit them against one another. I think that what is going to end up being more forceful and impactful, just because of the strength around it, will be labor organizing. And the reason for that is that labor organizing, hits production, right? It hits the heart of capital and capitalism. Now, tenant organizing can also be extremely effective. So I'm not trying to downplay it. And I don't think we should compartmentalize these things as saying you do one versus the other. Um, particularly in the US, the way that most people live, being able to organize, an apartment building, against a slumlord, against some of these big corporations, that can be something that can be incredibly impactful and powerful. Especially noting just how atomized people are. Like, on top of like the initial benefit of maybe being able to organize to do something about rent costs, to be able to do something about maintenance of the building, et cetera, et cetera. Being able to know your neighbors and be engaged with them on a kind of political level, right? Because you're organizing together for a common interest. There's just tremendous value in that. But your question was potential. So I think that, the potential of labor organizing is always there. I think, we have seen this upsurge. Sometimes, when you see these upsurge, it can get a little depressing because you realize just how low the level of organized labor is in terms of percentage of workers who are organized. But that's going to be absolutely necessary. I do think, circle that date, May 1st, 2028, to try to align contracts with the UAW, joining in on Sean Fain, leader of the UAW's call for a general strike. That's the call, right? So that's I think is something that is going to be the standard in the labor movement. Something that people who really want to see significant change should be looking towards. But tenant organizing, I think, is an excellent activity to get engaged in. Because there's been a lot of talk about getting involved in politics, doing all this kind of stuff, and you see some of it, and there's also a lot of people who are still sort of thinking about it. Tenant organizing is a great immediate way to get engaged with your neighbors, to get engaged in politics, and people should be wanting to do this stuff at all times. But there is something, particularly if you live, like, let's say, in a place like New York, where I know people really feel these Republican administrations. I don't know. It's like the sense of, like, here in Texas, it's like we have a Republican governor, so it's just like a constant kind of state of attacks on working people, and it's just part of like the norm, right? In New York, there seem I remember when I was living up there, like the energy is something else. So if you can get people engaged in politics via tenant organizing, it's a great way to do it. A Left Reckoning show in South Texas would be amazing. If anything, to get Matt to eat some real Mexican food would be a real treat. I mean, I would love to do New Orleans. I would love to do Nashville. We'd love to do Atlanta. Um, I've heard that sometimes these programs don't do as well, unfortunately, in those places, and uh, it's something that we want to figure out how to do it. I mean, maybe I haven't talked to them about this, but like maybe we could do something with like the Valley Labor Report. Maybe we could check in with some of their other friends who are doing this kind of stuff in the South to organize a Southern tour or something like that. I think that'd be a lot of fun. I'm really into it. We just got to figure it out. And we love hearing this. What's up, Romancer? Who says, "Hey David, I'm a big fan of Left Reckoning. Just became a patron. Thanks for the info and inspiration. We appreciate y'all very much, and thanks everybody. I mean, it's been really great having everyone joining up with the community. It's been really great keeping up with everybody over these past these past couple of weeks. It's been really, this is a difficult moment, but it's been really invigorating to just see the engagement, not just with like our program, but like all these wonderful images of people showing up at DSA meetings. I know my mom has been telling everybody who calls her worried about the election to join DSA. Y'all should be doing the same thing, and that's it's a really exciting and beautiful thing. Marco says Nashville is a nice midway point for both you and Matt. Hey, I'm happy I can drive there. Dusty Den says we would love to see y'all come to Albuquerque. I would love to go to Albuquerque. I love New Mexico, one of my favorite places. So we would love to get out there for sure. That's true. Our good friend up in North Texas says we're getting coffee Griscom instead of beer Griscom. Yeah, I will say we're getting a little bit more coffee Griscom in general. I've been cutting back a little bit, which is why I can do morning streams. Okay, I'm gonna get some more questions in here. John Ryan says, "How can Democrats win back working class voters in the next 4 years?" Well, I'll tell you one thing. They would need to radically reshape their political party. I mean, step one, they bring me in, fix their party. I'm not a Democrat, but they bring me in, fix their party. I would say first thing we do is we fire all of the leadership of the Democratic Party. Second thing is we break our slavish commitment to the genocide in Gaza. Three, we recommit publicly to the working class with a program of demands. So supporting something like an economic bill of rights, something that like people like Harvey K, have articulated. I think coming out there and saying we have failed and we are ready to rebuild and reorient ourselves would be the first thing that you would have to do. That could be like a week one program. And then the rest of it is engaging in the hard work of convincing people that shift has happened. One of the things to note about the Democratic Party is it's not just the politicians at the top of the ticket that are the issue. It is the Democratic Party organizations all across the United States. They're extremely hostile to grassroots organizations. They're extremely hostile to pro working class politics, and you see organizations like the Texas State Democratic Party, which has overseen a transfer of a strong blue state into something that people forget that Democrats once were electable in the state of Texas. You see them doing things like giving absurd amounts of money to that Juliana person, to people who have no real connection to working class communities, to the communities that they're losing, doubling down on stuff that's extremely off putting and uninteresting that leaves working class voters cold. So you need to purge the leadership of these parties, but you also need to radically reform those state institutions. But that's like what the party could do. That's not my politics, right? And I want to be really clear about this, that like as a socialist, I believe not only in socialist policies in the sense of like, oh, I want a higher minimum wage, oh, I want Medicare for all. What socialists believe is that working class people should be empowered in society. They should be the ones in charge of their own lives, be that at the workplace or in society. So a socialist doesn't want the Democrats to win in the sense of like, oh, we want because that's like a engine of a certain set of policies. No, socialists want the working class to win. So what my politics and what my policies would look like in power would be significant participation from working class people in politics, be it an independent organization or sort of overtaking one of the established political parties. I have no um, you know, spiritual connection to anything other than working class power. So if working class people can get in control of any kind of institution organization that represents them on the national scale, on the political scale, that's great. And then we would want to see working class people engaging in politics in a way that betters their life, right? And that would be, doing things like some of these policies that we support, supporting all these kind of programs, but it would be an active and engaged political movement of working class people, right? And that's a fundamental difference than anything you're going to get from um, on the Democratic Party side, right? Even in the best case scenario, where they have people who are interested in winning and less interested in serving their corporate masters, they're going to be a party that is going to want to manage the voters, manage the working class instead of being a movement of it. And that is where the fundamental divide starts. It starts way before we get into policy disagreement. It gets into who do you think the agent of history and of politics should be? Should it be the elites, the people at the top of society, the consultants, the people in the party apparatus, or should it be the everyday people in society? And that's a revolutionary break from the that kind of politics. I'm sorry, just because of time, and I know I'm a little bit behind on the questions, I'm gonna just sort of say see above on that, but add on the question of pushing any of these people to the left. I just don't believe that that's the way that we should be engaged in politics at this point, particularly with the billionaire or Gavin Newsom, who is a disaster. I just don't think engaging with those people at that level, like you're not pushing them left is like the only thing you can do is make them fearful of losing without the support of certain organizations, and that's as far as you should engage with those people. What's going on? Thanks for the chat. What's going on with Anna? I'm chatting. I'm on her podcast this week. Y'all should check it out. It'll be up. I don't know when, if it's this week or later, but I'll be on. I'll be on her program. Byron says, "What do you make on the recent Senate?" And thanks for the chat. What do you think on the recent Senate vote on arms to Israel? Is this a sign that the civil war is going on in the Democratic Party? I don't think so. Will we see a move away from being a pro-donor party? I mean, that's in APAC and etc. No, I mean, I think that we've seen plenty of signals that there are sections within the Democratic Party that don't want to support this because it's unpopular and it's wrong and it's evil. Um, but I don't think that is enough within that party to fully break. And I think that um, I wish, I guess, but I don't think so. Unfortunately, going back to heard someone say the benefit of tenant organizing is that it's a way to reach people like gig workers who are not currently organized. That's true too. Cult Dog is in Florida, who says, "Are y'all doing organizing in Austin with the DSA? We're trying to organize outside the Florida Democratic Party because they're being especially corrupt and incompetent." I mean, one of the big things going on is getting Mike Siegel elected to city council. He's in a runoff. He's a good person who should be in office, and that's I think a kind of an immediate focus. We don't have like explicit partisan city council elections here, but it's in and around the Democratic Party. Not doing any Longhorns trash talking on my channel. Um, and if I'm assuming where that chat is coming, I don't know if the Oklahoma Sooners have much where that is coming from. I don't know if the Oklahoma Sooners have much to talk about these days. Sorry. We're really excited to see Texas A&M next weekend. What's up, Cy? Good to hear from you. What happened in 1898? I'm curious, but I totally agree that people should read Thomas Paine. Our best Aquarius Builder says you should go read Thomas Paine, our best founding father. Then you'll see we are a plutocracy, not a democratic republic. They destroyed it in 1898. Curious what you mean by that last bit there. Hmm. Um, Byron Man says the silver lining about this Kurt moment is like the battlefield is very clear. I know who the allies of the working people are and disadvantaged, and I know who are the enemies. I think that's yeah. I mean that's the clarifying and positive aspect to this moment for sure. Okay, I'm making sure. Here we go. I know we got more questions here, but we do have an important one from our good friend congressional baseball fan who says, "Hey David, smoking any large pieces of meat next week?" Yes, my friend. I am going to be we're doing a brisket. I have a lot of family coming in. We're doing a brisket, and I decided last minute that I'll do some turkey legs and maybe a turkey breast. If you've never had that before, it's actually very good, kind of Texas barbecue thing. Just because I'm not spiritually attached to having to have a turkey for Thanksgiving, but I know some people are. So can do a brisket. Going to be a long one, 20-hour cook. Looking forward to it. And I just got all the wood, everything set up for it. And yeah, I mean, that's the best. I mean, I think in many ways, smoking something like a brisket for Thanksgiving is uh, so superior to turkey, not just in terms of taste and all that kind of stuff, but it's fun. It's a big ass event. People hang out for a day, as you're cooking it, and um, I think that's very festive, personally. Cozy Boy says, "Can we organize the suburbs? I live in a big suburban area because that's where I can afford now that the city is, quote, redeveloped and expensive. All my neighbors are homeowners and I don't want to write them off, but it feels like a hopeless task. Um, these people still need to work to live, but they are so ideologically captured by capitalism." Yeah, I think that we do have to organize the suburbs, and we have to organize the city, and we have to organize rural areas. I mean, you know, um, one of the difficult tasks of the suburbs, and I never know when people say suburbs what they mean. Like I live in Austin, um, but I live in single family home neighborhood in Austin. But I live in an urban area, right? It's categorized as an urban area. I think some people would call that suburban, but that's not particularly accurate. So I never know when people start talking about suburbs what effectively they mean. Just because I think that gets sort of thrown around to mean anything that's like not living in an apartment, right? Apartment is urban living, not, and that's not um, how I would categorize those distinctions. But suburban stuff, recognize it's the same thing as anywhere. You have to be able to recognize what is in front of people and what is the difficulty, right? Like, is this a suburban place where people go into the nearest city for work, right? Or is this a place that has a particular industry, right? These are questions that like I can't answer for you in the abstract, but if you want to do real political organizing, you need to recognize what are the symptoms of, you know, anti-democracy in my community. What are the symptoms of capitalism? What are the things that are making people's lives difficult in our community? Who is behind them? What are the forces that are enacting them on our community? So, and how can we organize against it? Thinking about a town near me, um, called Bastrop, where this South African freak Elon Musk has come into, and he's doing all kinds of horrible things. In the town, he's pouring toxic waste into the water table. Just really, really horrendous stuff. That's a great place to get people engaged in politics, right? That's a great way to get people engaged in a politics that is explicitly against the power and the privilege of the rich, because this guy thinks he can buy the state of Texas's government, and just do whatever he wants with the people, right? So, like, that's just an example of like thinking about other kinds of places and how you can engage in politics. So, totally, I understand how things can feel intimidating, but they're going to feel intimidating anywhere. Um, I think to get engaged in politics, right? If it's scary to do that in a city, especially if you're doing it right. Like in a city that maybe now has organizations, you just join the organization. But imagine the folks who had to start those organizations, right? That's a difficult task. So, um, I would think about it more of a question of like, how do you start an organization rather than does my place deserve to have like political organization, right? Um, and also, sometimes we can get into our own heads about what everyone else around us thinks. Sorry, it's just something that leftists tend to do, where they say, "Oh, everyone in my community is a Republican or a right winger." Like, do you know that? Like really? I mean, even if you live in like a quote unquote red district, look at what the vote totals for your community are. I mean, like there are some that are like 80-20, but a lot more, particularly if you're in the suburbs, are going to be competitive. And if you would feel comfortable organizing with Democrats, um, recognizing that those are around you versus Republicans, might give you the push that you need. And that's going to be the case in a lot of suburbs in the U.S. now. Just being honest. Yeah, and Cold Dog's right about this. We need a working class political party made up of unions. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of it. Our good friend, congressional baseball fan says ABQ is great. Can't get this New Mexican to shut up about it. I'm a big Albuquerque fan too. I don't know what I mean. Like, I it's one of those towns. I'm sorry to say this, but it's one of those towns that, like, if you go in there with a bad attitude, and not really wanting to make much effort to enjoy it or to experience. I mean, for me, I'm going there and I'm just getting as much New Mexican food as I possibly can because I love it. And you're gonna have a bad time. I mean, very radically different cities, but, like, I mean, Houston is an amazing American city, and the way that people talk about it is so absurd. And you realize that they're going there for work or travel or whatever, and they refuse to engage with the city or go in there with, like, a good faith effort to explore and see what's going on, and they just go to a strip mall and be like, "Wow, this whole city's a strip mall," right? Pisses me off. I hate elitism so much. And, it really drives me crazy. Our good friend Reject says, on a lighter note, how do you feel about the Ducks this year? I'm assuming you're talking about Oregon, and I'm going to tell you, I'm looking forward to beating them. All right, hell yeah! This is it's really great hanging out with everybody. Just a quick reminder. We got a lot of really great shows coming up. We're going to have Lilian Churchia on next Tuesday. She's great from What's Left of Philosophy podcast. We're going to be talking about the election. We're going to be talking about socialist feminism, all of that. We love chatting with Lilian. She's wonderful. We're also going to be joined by Vivek Chibber in a couple weeks too, who is, one of our teachers. He's somebody we love learning from, love reading. You should be reading his stuff if you're not. I mean, he is one of the best and most forceful Marxist thinkers in the United States right now. He's very accessible. He writes extremely well, and we're so excited to have him on the program. And don't forget, you can always sign up to get extra shows at patreon.com slash left reckoning. Um, but we got time and questions, so we'll keep going. Romancer says, I work in tech and have it good compared to most, but our power is lessening as capitalists bring in H-1B visas to suppress wage growth. How can I start to make my tech bro friends more conscious? I mean, it's one of those things is like higher wage workers who have more comfort and privilege, like they tend to be harder to organize. It's just a kind of reality. But I mean, making the points that you're making, I think recognizing that there is, if these things don't get codified, the protections that you have, they will take them away, right? They will, because what's going on right now is the tech industry has paid high wages, historically high wages, um, you know, for a while now. Well, what is the tech industry trying to do? They are trying to cheapen the cost of labor in the tech industry. And don't be so narcissistic as to think that you're going to be on top of it. Because, yeah, there is going to be an attempt to push down wages in the tech industry because, there was a period of time when that labor, that skill, that knowledge was so hyper specialized that only a small part of the population had it. But you're seeing it right now. I mean, look how competitive it is to get a job in the tech industry right now, right? There's that next generation of people who are getting started. They're seeing, they're seeing downward wage pressures because there are so many people going to school for computer science or whatever, graduating, trying to get a job. So don't think, I mean, my pitch on top of the stuff that particular about your industry is like, don't be, so misguided to think that you're going to be protected forever, particularly with younger workers who want to stay in these industries for long periods of time. Um, you know, get that floor that you started on codified, or else you're going to get downward pressure on yourself and your wages in the future. Right. That's the self-interest argument you can make to people for sure. I don't know what JoJo Mart is, but how do I start organizing a union at the JoJo Mart? I mean, first thing you got to do is you got to talk to your coworkers, and then you should figure out if you're serious about it and you think that there's interest. You should find out what union in your area would represent that kind of labor, and you reach out to them, and they will have you much better than I am at getting you started on that process. But that's how that kind of thing works. Talk to your coworkers a little bit, get a sense if they're interested in it, and then reach out to somebody. In a union that would represent you and begin that process. Thank you, Colt Dog. Thank you, Bill. I'm not putting that up, but I appreciate the compliment, my friend. I know. This is a great question, and I'll tell you. This is from Lanzetta, who says, "Hey, salam, David. We dodged a bullet with Paxton not getting the AG appointment. On the downside, he's still in Texas. What can Texans do to oust Paxton? Electorally, nothing seems to work in Texas. I mean, and I'll co-sign what you're saying here. I don't think people in the U.S. appreciate how damaging a Ken Paxton. I mean, and it's not over yet. I mean." I thought I think Ken Paxton thought he was going to get the AG nod from Trump. I think it's actually incredibly disrespectful that he didn't. Sorry, it's just not that I'm rooting for him, but this is somebody who has sold himself out to Donald Trump and Trumpism. Um, but he's effective at what he does. So it's probably good that he is not a U.S. Attorney General. How can we oust him? I mean, dude, this is the guy was impeached by Republicans, and then got let off in the Senate, right, for just absurd corruption. I mean, it was shut, open and shut kind of case. But he's protected, and the fact of the matter is that Texas government has effectively stopped responding to Democratic. I'm not talking about the party. I'm just talking about like democracy. Um, Democratic inputs because they don't fear the people at all. I mean, they put their thumb on the scale to protect their boy Ken Paxton, and it's they're protected, they're safe. Um, yeah, so you can't beat him for his corruption and electorally. And this is one thing that Democrats in the state don't understand like, about Ken Paxton, though, is oh well, Ken Paxton is corrupt, right? Why do people support? Because they think that they this is what Republican voters like about him. He's a bad guy, but he's our bad guy, right? He breaks the law, but he breaks it for us. And look what he's doing right now. Continuing to wage war on cities. I'm sure our friends in Dallas already know this, but he's trying to sue the city of Dallas because they have a decriminalized marijuana. This is he he knows how to play politics very well. And the only thing that's going to beat him is actually a sustained movement that can like actually win power. Because I just don't think you're going to be able to impeach this guy. You know, I mean, I really think that like it would have to be so extreme. Uh, I mean, even the securities thing, unless like unless the FBI literally arrests Ken Paxton, he's going to be in power for a while. Joe Snuffy says Rhode Island DSA is moving to form a local third party. Even now, Rhode Island is so Democratic dominated that it is the only way the Dems here crush co opt all efforts at reform. I don't know Rhode Island as well as you do, obviously. I can't imagine that party there is not corrupt. So good luck. I mean, Rhode Island could be a really interesting test case, just given its kind of history and peculiar politics as well as I know them. That like maybe something can build out. That'd be great. Best of luck. Our really good friend, Sensoria Maria says, "Good morning. With so much heaviness in the U.S. and the world, have you considered a show focused on how art of any sort can be resistance and healing slash positive?" Um, I love where your head's at. I mean, we probably won't be doing something like that on the program, but I think that happy to push people and encourage them to pursue that kind of thing. Um, themselves in their own life. I mean, I think it's absolutely critical for people to be able to engage in the beauty of the world, to engage with art. As Ben Burgess says, to learn to love country music and drink whiskey or whatever that means to you, right? I think that it's absolutely critical. People put too much of their hopes into politics in the sense of, that that's where they're going to find like spiritual meaning for themselves, and I think that that can be a really dangerous recipe for burnout, for sure. Good friend Lurda says, um, Lurda, fuck. Homeowners in the suburbs have deeply conflicted class interests because their whole life savings are interested in that home, and the value of that home is tied to capitalist profits. I mean, it's not just suburbs voters, right? This is like pensions, right? This is Grace Blakely writes about this so well, um, in her book Stolen, I believe, about how, the way that certain sectors of the working class became embedded in the super profits for capitalists was a very effective political tool, because even though it's nothing compared to the wealth of the rich, um, there is a kind of, my pension is invested in the stock market, its increase is good for me. um, Home ownership is another example of that, and that's a tough thing to break, and it's a good thing to understand. Um, have you seen those videos of settlers? They're horrible people. From the videos I've seen, um, I heard a report of them going into an elementary school and brutalizing teachers. And I mean, you know, uh, Zionism is just it's a hell of of a brutal ideology. I mean, it really is something that is set up to dehumanize and encourage some of the most brutal violence imaginable. Um, it's hard to stomach. And Philbo Schwagen says, it's wild how much Musk has taken over Bastrop. No, it's true, and it breaks my heart. And also, I got your message, and I'll get back to you. I'm so sorry. I've been a little tied up. All right, let's take a couple more. Bill says, "What are some good books that you've read recently?" Well, as people may know, I'm deep on I'm working on my first book right now, so I'm pretty much only reading history, um, about like the South and Texas, for my book. Um, but if you're looking for some read, I'll tell you, pick up if you want nonfiction. Pick up the Socials Challenge today. It's super short. It's great. I think it's definitely something that is worthwhile. Um, Lanzetta says, "I'm from Houston, and I do think it's a suburban concrete hellhole. LOL, with nothing to do except go to strip clubs and eat delicious foods." Well, if you're saying it's a hellhole, you're ending with two things that sound like a lot of fun. What's up, my good friend Joshua? Thanks for coming over from Instagram. I don't know how well that's translating, but we figured we might as well start putting those up. I don't know. I'm not talking about Chris Cutrone if we're talking about that, or if you're, I don't know. We're talking about Vivek Chibber. I still haven't read the Class Matrix. You should. It's a great book. Highly suggest it. Confronting Capitalism is also a great book too. Jules says, "Are you on Blue Sky?" Yes, I am. It's my name. I haven't been particularly active there, but I know there's a lot of folks out there, and it's I'll try to. I'm trying to be less on these things though, just to be completely honest. No, this is true too. If Ken Paxton were to become Attorney General, he would certainly come after legal cannabis states. He really is one of the most corrupt people in politics. But they're good. The thing that like you have to recognize though, and I know people really don't like hearing it, but you have to recognize that Abbott and Paxton and Patrick, they're good at politics. I don't say this in an admiring way or anything like that, but you will underestimate them if you don't recognize that they know that they're doing these things for a reason. And that reason is evil, but they know what they're doing. You know, I mean, Abbott's tactic with busing migrants was so cruel to trick people and to send them across the country. Was nasty. But boy, did that change the opinion of a lot of New Yorkers and Angelinos and people in Chicago about migration in this country. Effective, you know, mean, cruel, but effective. And you just have to recognize that these folks know a little bit more than they get credit for, particularly in Texas, where you can make the mistake of thinking that these guys are sleepwalking through it because they just dominate politics so much here. It's like no, it's because they're playing the game a lot better than their opponents. That's for sure. And I think, yeah, I mean, an Austin live show would be a great idea. Yeah, maybe sometime soon. Maybe get me, Arm Brown, Matt, a couple other folks. That'd be fun. Georgia, that's Florida now. New Jersey, Florida, Utah, Florida. Rename the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of Florida. Um, it's internal migration in this country and the way that it's played out, like just not even politically, just culturally, has been uh, kind of fascinating. I mean, and also like, people talk about Florida, but it's like think about the New Jersey contingent and the role that's playing across the US. Even here in Texas. I mean, some of the wildest characters in Texas culture and politics are these New Jersey guys who come here and play cowboy. And our good friend in South Texas, Del Martinez, says it's so disheartening to see the Republicans go wild and the people just don't care. I checked school budgets, and in my local school, the state has decreased funding from 70% to 55%. Yeah, it is horrifying. Like, it's one of these things too where it's just like South Texas has been so taken for granted by not only the state Democratic Party, but also by the national Democrats. It is just a place that just does not get the investment that it deserves. And that's a long term project that has created a huge advantage for the Republican Party. And in a just world, there would be some comeuppance for the people behind that disinvestment. Actually, going back to since Maria asked about an art focused podcast, I have been wanting to get some musicians that I'm particularly interested in who really link kind of like country and like folk, southern folk into politics effectively on the program. I've been reaching out to some of them. Sometimes those guys don't really do like podcasts as much, but we've been wanting to do that, which I think would be really fun and very left reckoning too. So that might be something in that vein of engaging with like art and politics here. All right, I'm gonna take a few more, make sure I can get to the bottom at least. But we appreciate y'all, and oh yeah, we got some exciting things. I don't know about this, but I'll read it out. Mark Gold says, "Have you read about or covered any of the Dallas Black Dance Theater labor violations developing wildly? They're going to be at the center of a lawsuit to challenge the constitutionality of the NLRB. I knew there was attempts coming from Texas. I didn't know about the its connection to a dance theater. We'll keep that up. See, this is the thing. Even the Houstonians who are going to crap on their town can't do it long. Lanzetta has been in here just reminding it, talking themselves back up about Houston. Yes, Houston has a legendary music scene, and of course, the home of DJ Screw. Nicholas Lopez says, "Why do you think the Democrats lost even more in this election in Texas? It's been a cycle. I mean, I remember in 2020 doing a video for Jacobin about the election results in South Texas in particular, where you started to see more and more Hispanic voters not voting for the Democrat. And oh my lord, the hate mail that I got was astronomical, and it was because people are so committed. Were so committed. I'm sure they still are. Like, every time you hear people who want to refuse to recognize the fact that Kamala Harris lost because of their lack of engagement of working class voters and working class issues, every time you hear those attempts to deny it, it is because they want to put their head in the sand about this fundamental flaw in the political strategy of now the National Democratic Party, but it was something that was very much developed in Texas, which is this demographics are destiny strategy. This belief that, non-white voters are going to just forever support the Democratic Party. Extremely wrong, extremely dangerous, alienating. You saw a full-on revolt against that in South Texas. Um, People are disinvested in that part of the state, as we were talking about earlier. People are upset by the way that the Democrats run and manage the economy. Um, don't forget also, organizations like one of the better government programs for when it comes to jobs are things like the Border Patrol in those communities too, right? This is a region of the country that has been forgotten, and if you can understand how that operated in the Rust Belt, you need to understand how that's going to operate in South Texas, right? And this has been something that has been a long time coming. And there's been enough people who've been saying, y'all need to recalibrate your strategy and your movements here. But what you get too, and then also the Democrats, they don't invest in that region either, just like on a straight up political level. I'm not even talking about like doing things for people. I'm just talking about like ads and shit. What you'll get is a bunch of Spanish language ads like in the 3 weeks before the election. Like the actual engagement of communities and social organizations there is extremely limited because again, they just have taken it for granted. Um, so it's South Texas, which I think is the main story about why the Democrats lost. I mean, but look about it. I mean, think about it. You have Kamala Harris, who ran a sleepwalker campaign about nothing, frankly. And then you had Colin Allred, who was, I'm going to be kind of as right wing as Ted Cruz, found a way to make being a football player boring. Had no real kind of economic populist message, no real motivating economic strategy, and just sort of pointed to abortion, which I'm sorry, this is something that people really don't like to hear. But the fact of the matter is that voters across the United States made it really clear that they did not believe that the Democratic Party was going to do anything at all about abortion. It's not that voters don't care about it, as you saw voters did when they had the ability to protect healthcare and women's healthcare in this country. Voters said, "We will do that." When the Democrats said, "Hey, trust in us to fight this fight," people said, "No, thank you," because they've lived through it and they know there was no effective plan. There was pointing towards it, but people sometimes are saying, "Look, well, but did voters not care about abortion in Texas or all these red states where it's coming?" It's like, no, they didn't believe. They didn't believe that the fucking Democratic Party was going to do anything about it. Because it was something that they talked about, like, this is a negative thing that Republicans did to you, but not something that was motivating or mobilizing to enough people, right? Certainly, I'm sure people listening to this program probably was, but not to enough people that they thought that the Democratic Party was actually going to do something effective on it. And I'll be honest, I don't think that if Kamala Harris won the election and they had had seats in Congress, right, and they're able to win the House, maybe squeak out something in the Senate, I think that they would have it would have been Lucy with the football. They would have they would not have engaged in the political. They wouldn't have been able to codify it. And I'm not even just talking about the numbers. They wouldn't want to touch it, which is the same, and it's the same reason they didn't codify it in the first place in the past, because they like having it as an issue to run on. The issue is that when you lose, like they do, then you get into situations now where millions of women aren't able to get health care, right? And it kind of sucks for them because they sort of thought they were always going to have this as an opportunity to fundraise off of, and that they had some kind of deal with the devil, with the Republican Party, that they were just going to keep this in limbo so both parties could use it to mobilize their bases, right? Well, sucks. You lost. You played with fucking fire and you got burnt. But you know what? That's not even fair because they're not the ones who get burnt. It's working class women and families in the South who are the ones getting burnt by the mismanagement and the dangerous fucking games of these freaks. So, there's a larger story to tell about Texas. We want to do much more of that. I'm writing a big book on Texas, um, but that's like initial reactions to some of the fundamental issues here. Del Martinez, I think I'd get in trouble if I put that up on the screen, so I'm not. But that is a very good joke. I mean, we would love to get Croy and the boys on the program. And I know we used to do the country music history with Ben Burgess. Maybe we could reinvigorate that sometime in the future. I don't know this. I'll definitely check them out because this is my kind of thing. But Dusty Den says, if anyone's interested in botany, one of my favorite botanists lives in South Texas and is on YouTube. Crime pays, but botany doesn't. Highly recommend for anyone printing up the YouTube feed. I'm going to check that out because I need way more of that kind of stuff. My YouTube feed is politics, YouTube, and barbecue guys. So I would love to get a little bit more, and actually, and a lot of like musician stuff. Marcos, I'm sorry, we're coming to the end, so I don't think I can. But can you touch on the recent indictments of Bolsonaro? Bolsonaro, as Dave Rubin says. Um, hey, hell yeah! I hope that he gets to sit inside of a prison. We should definitely do something more on that in the future. Cold Dog, any plans to get Richard Wolf on the show in the future? More than welcome. We'd love to. He's sometimes hard to book, but we'd love to do that. Um, Appreciate you, Griscom. Thanks for hopping on this morning. Thanks for hanging out. This is great. We could try to see Owen Jones. Okay. And last couple ones before we run. What's going on with Quinn Ewers and all his self sex? Hey, I think that he's setting himself up for a really, really incredible end to the season, and we're looking forward to it. And there'll be no Ewers slander in the chat today. Del Martinez says, thanks for saying this. People have to know why South Texas turned. It was happening every single day for the past decade. That Starr County remained the poorest county in the United States. Hey, I'm here with you, and it makes me mad as hell that people wanted to ignore that as long as they did. And they're still ignoring it too. That's the worst thing about it. They're still ignoring what happened in South Texas. All right, folks. A little surprise, a little secret. We got new Left Reckoning merch coming out. This is, we're going to have a t-shirt, a couple other things, but I love this new hat. It's a little old school, fun stuff. We got that, a few other things coming out. We already have our excellent Left Reckoning black barbecue cap and a few other things that are always available on leftreckoning.com /store. But more coming the next few days. So y'all will want to keep your eye out. Perfect gift for Christmas or to your switched on friends. Matt and I will be back this Sunday with a bonus episode. We're gonna be hanging out, chatting, a little think tank. I know y'all love those. So sign up patreon.com/left reckoning to get access to that. Next weekend, we got Lillian Churchia. We love having her on the program. Talk more about the election, socialist feminism, and much, much more. And then the week after, Vivek Chibber, the man. Keep up with it. Everybody have a good rest of the week and join us this Sunday for the bonus episode. Appreciate all of y'all so much. Thanks for tuning in. Maybe we'll do these more in the morning. But thank y'all.